Okay, so let's look at 13. 13 is different from all the other ones surrounding number 13 on the test review because we are finally going to graph this equation. Remember, we are not going to use a calculator, so we're going to use this or do this by hand. So let's identify the following pieces. I have A is 4. I have B of 1/3. You don't see in parentheses x plus or minus a c value, okay? You don't see this anywhere with that x, so c is 0. And last but not least, you're going to have your shift up 2 units, that d value of 2. Now let's go ahead and plug in what we know in this 2 pi over b is equal to our new period, because we're going to obtain this new period in order to write it right here. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to grab our b value, okay, of 1/3, and we're going to put that in the denominator because it's 2 pi over 1/3. So 2 pi divided by 1/3 probably looks easier to see it this way, so that you use from 5th grade, keep, change, flip, and then you multiply straight across so that you get 6 pi is your period. Okay, so one wave is going to basically go from 0 to 6 pi rather than 0 to 2 pi the way it would normally go. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start graphing. So we're going to see where is the graph going to be, and you can do a small little reconstruction of this that we saw in our notes. We had like a point here with a box. This was your D equilibrium. And then this was the lowest minimum value. So there's a max. This is my min. And then right here we had an oval, if you will, as far as showing the x values that you're going to end up graphing. And then if you do recall, it actually showed like a little small squiggly here that was between this D value equilibrium, the middle of the wave, if you will. And this was your A value. This was your amplitude. Okay? So now we're going to start going through and filling this out. So D, in my opinion, is still the easier one to start with. So let's go ahead and highlight that on the graph. This is our equilibrium. So our D value is going to be a positive 2. And because we're working with a sine function, we're going to draw what a sine function actually default starts off at. Remember, a sine function is going to look something like this. It's going to increase immediately, and that's one period if I were to start from 0, if you will, otherwise the y-axis. Okay? So now let's go ahead and look at the other letters that we have. Okay? So we have a period of 6 pi. So this whole thing is 6 pi long as far as the period goes. So you're going to put 6 pi right here. There were no shifts left or right, so you know that you're going to start at 0. We go ahead and make that black so you can see it better. And then now we know our A value, oops, not there, our A value is 4. So that means up 4 from 2 will give you 6, down 4 from 2 will give you a negative 2. And then last but not least, we're going to look at what is in between 0 and 6 pi, which would be 3 pi. So now I can graph 3 points. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to graph 0, 2. Do that in red. And then I'm going to graph 3 pi 2. So 3 pi 2 is going to be here. And last but not least, I'm going to grab this 6 pi, and it's going to be 2 as well. So let me take out the highlight so you can continue to see what these are. Okay? So we have our first point again was at 0, 2. The next one is at 3 pi 2, and then 6 pi 2. So now I just need to do half of 3 pi is going to be 3 pi over 2. And see, what would that be here? That's going to be 6. So at 3 pi over 2, which 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, I'm going to go all the way to 6. Okay? And then I have 4, 5, Oops. So 3 pi over 2 is going to be 4, 5, 6 pi over 2. So 1, 2, 3 pi over 2. 4, 5, 6 pi over 2. 7, 8, 9 pi over 2. 10, 11, 12 pi over 2. So again, let me do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pi over 2 is where my minimum value is going to be on the graph at -2. Okay? Or if you wanted to eyeball it and see halfway, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pi over 2 is going to be at a -2. Okay, so let's go ahead and put that right here. You could say it's 1, 2, 3 from that, 1, 2, 3 from that. And then just know that it's going to be at -2. So if you wanted to eyeball it, you can do that. Just be very accurate when you're doing that. And now we can go ahead and graph one period of this wave. Okay, so if I were to graph another period, I'm just going to keep going with the pattern. And notice the pattern. It's at 2, 6, 2, -2, 2, 6, which is going to be 3 over. And then 3 over is going to go back to 2. 3 over would go back to -2. And finally 3 over would go back to 2. And notice that it ended at 12 pi, which makes sense because each wave was 6 pi units long, which what we got way back here when we did that equation for the period. So that is how you're going to graph. The last thing that we'll just do is just make sure that we label the points like 0, 2, 3 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, comma 6. Then you have 3 pi 0, 9 pi over 2, comma -2, 6 pi 0, and then you can keep labeling if you chose to. But that right there is what would be the minimum stuff required on this kind of question, is to label at least all the points of one period and to graph at least one period for your test.